Peace and blessings, everybody. It's Sunday, February the 24th, the year 2019. And Aaron's had a long day today, so we're going to do a year of Jubilee update solo. So you guys are stuck with me today. Before we get started, I want to start off with something lighthearted. So, you know, I'm always like, it's just hard not to be in a bad mood with so many innocent people in prison. It can really get to your mind, but you guys know my friend, the Texas Deacon, right? He's always looking for a deal, and he found like a deal online with a bunch of cheap cups, right? Because he's always having like a bunch of people at his church. He's very involved in his church, and they're always having get-togethers with food and whatnot. And so he found this online deal where he could get all these free plastic cups for a really, really good price, and he bid on it, and he won the bid, and he went to go pick up the cups, and this is the cup that he won. It has a picture of this lady, and it says Dorotha for Democratic County Judge Court. That wouldn't be so bad all by itself. I mean, I don't know much about Dorotha. I don't know much about her, but it says that. Hold on just one second. She's trial attorney for Barack Obama's Justice Department. So, you know, Dorotha is a trial attorney for Barack Obama's Justice Department, and the Texas Deacon wanted so bad to use these cups because he'd won them for, you know, his online bid. But I guess they had a church meeting, and he said, we ain't using Barack Obama's cups here. That ain't gonna happen. So the Texas Deacon he's stuck with a lot of cups that he can't use. I don't know why I think that's funny. I just think that, I guess he'll have cups to use at his home. But anyway, let's get on to the Year of Jubilee update. But I do want to share some things before, you know, for context. This has come up several times, not just with personal friends lately, but on phone conversations. And when it's coming up so much, I feel like I need to talk about it. It also was an issue with my dad before he died. And let me read you a verse from the Old Testament that might be a little harsh. This comes from Deuteronomy 20, 16, and 17. Okay. Here goes. Deuteronomy 20, 16. But of the cities of these people, which the Lord thy God doth give thee for an inheritance, thou shalt save alive nothing that breatheth. If it's a baby, if it's a woman, if it's a teenager, if it's a child, if it's a man, if it's an animal, save alive nothing that breatheth, but thou shalt utterly destroy them. When my dad read that, he turned away from the Bible. He said he didn't want to serve a God like that. And I've heard some people recently tell me that the God of the Old Testament is not the Father of Jesus, that they don't believe that the Old Testament God aligns with Jesus. Jesus said, I and my Father are one. I believe the words in this book. Every single word written in it, I wouldn't change one word. I know you guys will. You guys feel very comfortable changing the Word of God. I know that you do, but I don't. I don't say the Greek and the Hebrew say this, and I don't try to say a better translation would be. This book that I'm holding in my hand is perfect. There ain't one thing wrong with it. Not one thing. Anyway, when you read a verse like that, you have one of two ways to go that I see. One way is, well, God is bad. God told the Israelites to go kill all those people. You can make a decision that God is bad. God gave you free will, and you can decide that if you want to. Or you can decide that maybe those people are pedophiles. Maybe they were drinking baby's blood. Maybe they were full of a bunch of transvestite sodomites. Maybe they were fornicators, murderers. Maybe they deserved killing. Do you think when a conflict grows and grows and grows that it'll get beyond the point of just being words and petitions? At some point, you get beyond just big speeches and fancy petitions. You get into the area of blood and iron. That's when it gets ugly. We've seen it all throughout human history. All right, well, I'm just telling you, I believe the Bible, and I believe that Jesus and his Father are one. Jesus said, I and my Father are one. And so I believe the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelations. If you don't, that's your business. I'm not going to tell you what to believe and what not to believe, but I believe that Bible. I believe every word in it. All right, let's get to another thing I wanted to share with you guys. You guys know we have more people in prison than China. America doesn't have anything more than China, but we got more people in prison than China. 1 in 100 adults are in prison right now. I'm not talking about have ever been in prison. I'm talking about in prison right now. And we got 2.3 million people in prison. 2.3 million. Not only are they trying to put more and more people in prison, they're trying to silence them. Darlie Routier on Texas death row doesn't even get access to a telephone. Barbara Holder on Texas life row, she's not going to be put to death, but she's serving a life sentence. They won't even let me put her on a speakerphone, so I had to find out another way to record her voice, right? They've banned my wife and I from putting out messages from anybody in Terre Haute, Indiana or Marion, Illinois. The wardens at Terre Haute, Indiana and Marion, Illinois are absolute devils. And they won't let me communicate with anybody at either one of those illegal, satanic, hellhole prisons. Daniel Riley has told me that if I put his voice on the internet, he will be thrown in the hole. Daniel Riley also spent time in the CMU. Jeffrey Winehouse, let's talk about him a little bit. Do you know, I'm going to get to him in the normal update, but do you know that Matt Thompson recently went to visit Jeffrey Winehouse, who's been in the hole over 2 weeks, and they threw Matt Thompson in jail? All Matt Thompson was wanted to visit his friend. Jeffrey Winehouse has been in the hole. Jeffrey Winehouse has told me if my voice goes out in the internet, they will punish me and torture me. They will put me in the hole in isolation. Recently, within the past 48 hours, Jeffrey got a message out to somebody, and I published it because I believe that Jeffrey wanted it published. Now, members of Jeffrey's family and even Jeffrey's lawyer have told me to take it down because Jeffrey has a gag order and they're going to punish him even more. That puts me in a very difficult position, but this isn't the first time something like this has come up. You need to understand that my first loyalty is to this Bible and to Jesus Christ, right? My loyalty and my behavior is guided by the principles in this book and by Jesus Christ. My second loyalty is to my friend Jeffrey Winehouse, who I believe is innocent. And I believe that Scott Mertens and Henry Folsom have attempted to murder him, but God saved his life. And if I'm operating under the belief that Jeffrey would want his message to get out from that hellhole, I'm sorry, but I can't take the message down. Right? I'm sorry that they're going to hurt him. They probably will. They probably will punish Jeffrey even more than they already are. They're already force medicating him. They already tried to kill him with 2 bullets in the head and 2 bullets in the chest. But see, Jeffrey is sitting in a hellhole. I believe that Jeffrey wants his message to get out, that he's innocent. And he doesn't want to sit in prison 30 years. He does not want to die a slow death in prison. And so unless somebody can show me that Jeffrey wants me to take that message down, it's going to stay up. Because I love Jeffrey as a brother. And I don't want I know it's like a hostage crisis situation. It's like terrorists have captured our brother, Jeffrey Winehouse. And terrorists are threatening to kill Jeffrey, to torture him, to put him in isolation, and take him put him in a situation where he can't communicate. But if he gets the message out, am I going to cover up the message that Jeffrey worked very hard to get out? and put his own life at risk because I'm going to be scared of the terrorist on Jeffrey's behalf. You could say a lot of bad things about me, and I understand, but I got to be loyal to Jeffrey. You understand what I'm saying? Jeffrey is asking me to get his message out that he's innocent. At least I believe that he is. Now, whether Jeffrey's asked me or not, I believe that he is, you know, and I don't want him to get in more trouble. I don't want them to torture him. I don't want them to put him in isolation. I don't want them to put him in the hole. I don't want them to force medicate him. I don't want them to take away his phone privileges and his mail privileges. I'm sorry that his prison guards and the warden are soulless, evil reprobates from hell. I'm sorry that that's the case. I love Jeffrey as a brother. If I'm operating under the belief that a message needs to get out because he's innocent and the governor of Missouri is ignoring him and ignoring the testimony of Marty Leach, ignoring the testimony of 2 FBI agents, all who say that Jeffrey did not pull his gun, I pray that all of America starts talking about Jeffrey Winehouse. I pray that everyone gets full of righteous anger and marches around that prison and that courthouse screaming to the top of their lungs that we ain't going to let the evildoers, Bob Parks, the warden, the people who work at the prison, they ain't going to let nobody rest until Jeffrey gets set free. Because I have lost all faith in the appeal system and in our court systems. I don't have any faith in it whatsoever. And I don't think they're going to set Jeffrey free. They put an 80,000 volt shock collar on his leg. The warning label said that it will make you pee and defecate yourself. They went out and bought it specifically for Jeffrey because they'd never used one before. And they said, Jeffrey, you got a big mouth. And if you open up your mouth in front of this jury, we're going to electrocute you, boy. We're going to push this button and you will experience some severe pain. They did this in a courtroom right here in America. And if that doesn't make you upset, then you and I are not even the same species. And people will say, I need to calm down. I will tell them, why ain't you as angry as me? Why ain't you angry that an innocent man is suffering in a hellhole in a Missouri prison who's innocent, who did nothing but try to do good with his life? Is Jeffrey perfect? No, he's not a perfect man, but he didn't deserve to be shot in the head. He didn't deserve to be shot in the chest, and he doesn't deserve to sit in a prison for 30 years. Schaefer Cox. Okay. Schaefer Cox, been in prison 7 years. He's got a 26-year sentence. I understand there's a great musician named Jordan Page that's going to release songs about him, and I look forward to that. And I praise God that Jordan Page is going to do that. But that's another innocent man. Schaefer Cox is a good soul, right? He's an innocent man in prison. It should make you mad that we have innocent men in prison. Let me say this too before I get into my prisoner update. There is a team of evil, wicked people. They receive enjoyment. In other words, if you decide you're going to stand up for Jeffrey, or you're going to stand up for Schaefer, and you're going to put your name out there, and you say you believe they're innocent too, they're going to try to find out where you work. They're going to call your job. They're going to try to get you fired. Not only that, but these same people they call the prison. They call the prison in order to have the guards trash their cells. They call the prison and they joke about, we need to have the prisoner put on suicide watch where he's stripped of all his clothes and he has to sit naked in a cell on suicide watch. Maybe be forced medication. These people have a Facebook page and they brag about calling the prison and having the prisoners harassed, having the prisoners' communication privileges taken away. They brag about wanting the prisoner put on suicide watch. They brag about calling the prison and saying, I feel threatened by their phone calls. Their supporters are calling and putting death threats on me. I believe they're lying. And they do all of this for the explicit purpose of causing these prisoners even more pain and suffering than they've already suffered. They're the type of people with the dark hearts that receive enjoyment of the suffering of other people. Let me share this with you too. Can you imagine you're a guard and you're getting paid a pretty good salary to be an overseer of these prisoners? And all of a sudden you get a phone call. You get a phone call from the public and you say, so-and-so threatened me. So-and-so is a threat to me. So-and-so said this in a phone call to Rudy. Would you go do something about that? I feel threatened. Man, that guard, the type of people they hire for those guards, they've been waiting for that phone call their whole life. Man, they have been waiting for you to call them and complain about that prisoner. And now they got an excuse to go give that prisoner a hard time. They're going to trash their cell. They're going to tear up all their stuff. If Daniel Riley was in the middle of a painting, have you guys seen Daniel Riley's paintings, by the way? They're going to tear up his painting. They're going to put goop and they're going to take any soap or hygiene products that he's got and they're going to trash the whole thing. They're going to let it leak out all over his clothes, all over his, what's it called when you have a square thing that you paint on? There's a word for it. I can't think of the name right now. They're going to trash his whole cell, man. And what do you think instigated that? Your phone call. The devils. The devils called the prison and they reporting. They feel threatened. You got to be kidding me. You people are the most disgusting, dark-hearted, reprobate devils I've ever seen in my life. And God's going to rain justice down like a mighty river one day. You guys that take enjoyment from the pain and suffering of these prisoners, you guys have no idea what you're doing. The Bible says, touch not the Lord's anointed. And I'm not saying everybody's in prison is innocent, but a lot of them are. On our website, a lot of them are. Let's go through the update, and I'll try to go as fast as I can. Francis Schaeffer Cox. I can't talk to him. He can't talk to me. I pray that you write him a letter because you can. You have not been banned from writing a Schaeffer a letter. You need to watch a speech called The Solution to Liberty speech by Schaeffer Cox. If you haven't seen that, or if you have seen that, then you also need to watch a documentary called Department of Injustice. The Untold Story of Schaeffer Cox. He's got a website called freeschaeffer.com. Because he is so charismatic and because he does have a gift of speaking about liberty and speaking about biblical values and speaking about a commitment, from us to turn over a world to our children where we can live in freedom, they hate Schaeffer Cox. They had to put him in a special prison to shut him up. They've tortured Schaeffer multiple times. They've tried to kill him. And what have they tried to use? They've tried to use 24 points of Chinese thought reform. You guys think I'm making that up. You guys think I'm embellishing the facts. I know for a fact that they use 24 points of Chinese thought reform inside of Marion illegal secret hellhole prison. We've got reports of people being murdered, 4-point shackled, so cold that the toilet water freezes. Guards yelling at you, not letting you get to sleep for long periods of time. Dehumanizing and humiliating things where they take all your clothes. And you guys want to receive enjoyment on the pain and suffering of these prisoners? David Hinkson has not contacted me in a long time. We have people on the internet right now that have bragged openly that they called the Kentucky prison in USP McCreary and reported David Hinkson as running a business. That David Hinkson is a big con artist. If David Hinkson is such a big con artist, you give me one person, one, that has a valid complaint that David ever swindled them. You won't find one person. David Hinkson is America's most provably innocent political prisoner. Pastor Broden took his story to the White House. We praise God for that. and he was starting to get some attention, and the devils called the prison, and now David Hinkson, all of his communications has been taken away, and he's been thrown in the hole, and the devils are just reveling. They're bragging about it. Just like when a terrorist event happens in America, you got all these groups out there that try to claim credit for what happened. You know, like whether it's Oklahoma City or 9/11 or whatever terrorist event, there's always these groups that claim credit for the event. When David Hinkson got punished and thrown in the hole and all his communication privileges taken away, you got people on the internet bragging about it. Like, I did that. I called the prison and reported him. You guys, you know, when Pilate offered Barabbas or Jesus to be set free because Pilate said, I can find no fault in this man, you know what the Jews of Jewry yelled out? May his blood be upon us and our children. You guys want to claim credit for the suffering and the pain? And David Hinkson's been in prison 15 years on a 43-year sentence. He never hurt anybody. I want you to imagine waking up, living your day around a bunch of vile, violent people. And guards yelling at you all the time. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, 15 years. And yet we got devils that are still trying to say bad things about David Hinkson and get him in trouble. You guys have no idea. See, there comes a time when we go beyond just fancy speeches and words. It's called the escalation of conflict. Charles Dyer, we've sent him some books recently. I hope he gets them. His mother is his biggest advocate. If you have not, well, let me go back to David Hinkson. There's a video called The Cesspool of Judicial Corruption. If you want to learn about David Hinkson, you got to watch that video. The Cesspool of Judicial Corruption. There's a 370-page book of the same title written by his father. All of that is available on David's webpage. Matter of fact, we got some new business cards that have David Hinkson on the back of it. Charles Dyer is been sentenced to 70 years in prison. He's not going to get out until 2040. That's 21 years from now. I pray that you write him a letter and let him know that you care about him. His mother loves him. His father has died since he was in prison. He was charged with some very heinous crimes that everyone knows that he's innocent of. There was no physical evidence. They used the testimony of a girl who had been coached by a viciously vindictive, pill-popping Jezebel wife in the middle of a bitter custody battle. The wife had been looking up pornographic images. She coached the daughter. When the daughter testified in trial, when she described the color of the couch and the bed and the pillow, do you know that all of those colors of the furniture matched the pornographic images on the computer used by the mother? It didn't match the colors of the couch and the bed in Charles Dyer's home because he never did anything. There was no physical evidence that she'd even been molested at all. There's a document called Operation Floodlight. I pray you go read it. It's one thing to have a pedophile who's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and you believe that he's guilty, and I believe in the death penalty. It's a whole nother thing for an innocent, righteous man to have a wrong charge put on him and convicted. It took them 3 trials to convict Charles. They didn't have any evidence at all. You got a video. You got a video of R. Kelly raping a 13-year-old girl and peeing on her. You got a video of it. And it took you over 10 years to send R. Kelly to prison. He's just now being held accountable. But Charles Dyer, no evidence whatsoever. Read the document, Operation Floodlight. You go read it. Jeffrey Winehouse is sitting in the hole. If God doesn't work a miracle, and if we don't raise our voices on behalf of Jeffrey Winehouse, Jeffrey Winehouse is going to die in prison. He's aged a great deal. He's not getting any younger. They are abusing him, and I'm concerned they are force medicating him, and they are trying to kill him a second time. FreeJeffNow.com. If you haven't seen the video where they try to kill him, you need to go watch it. You also need to familiarize yourself with the testimony of an eyewitness named Marty Leach. Marty Leach is an unbiased eyewitness. Marty Leach said that they tried to murder, execute, and set up Jeffrey Winehouse, that he did not have a gun in his hand. Now, who are the people that said he had a gun in his hand? The people that tried to kill him, Scott Mertens and Henry Folsom. Did they have an incentive to lie? Hell yeah, they had an incentive to lie, and they did. They're provable liars. They lied and lied and lied, and they're going to lie some more. They have lied about Jeffrey so many times, it's sickening. And Scott Mertens has got promoted. You got a guy who attempted to murder Jeffrey Winehouse who's been promoted within the Missouri law enforcement community. And he's serving right now as somebody of honor. Makes me sick. Russell Dean Landers. Been sentenced to 44 years in prison, never hurt anybody. You got a police officer in Balch Springs, Texas. I'm not sure, but I think his name might have been Roy Oliver. Let me just find out real quick. I think he shot a young black teenager in the head named Jordan Edwards. Yeah, that's it. Roy Oliver murdered Jordan Edwards. He would have got away with it too, except there was one police officer, it just didn't sit right. And he just couldn't handle lying for his friend who murdered Jordan Edwards, so he had to testify against him. Now that's a rare thing. It's very rare when a police officer does that. Now you would think a police officer that gets convicted of murdering a young teenage boy, especially when he's black, he gonna get some serious time, right? Roy Oliver, who murdered Jordan Edwards in Balch Springs, Texas, which ain't but 5 miles from my house, he got 15 years in prison. 15 years. 15 years. David Hinkson got 43 years, never hurt a soul. Russell Lander, 44 years, never hurt a soul. Ed and Elaine Brown, 40-something years apiece. Schaefer Cox, 26 years. Jeffrey Winehouse, 30 years. There's no victims. Jeffrey Winehouse was the victim. A police officer shoots Jordan Edwards, kills him, shoots him in the head for no reason. There's no reason for it other than he's just a murderer and loves killing people. Gets 15 years, probably be out in 10. Maybe he won't go to prison at all. Maybe he'll appeal it, and the law officers always cover up for each other, don't you know? Don't you know? Hey man, if you're a law officer, you better comply or die. You better do what we say, and if you don't do what we say, we're going to kill you. There are some things worse than death. We got a new guy on our list. His name is Anthony Troy Williams. He's a black dude, by the way. He was helping people save their homes from banking and mortgage fraud. He believes in the Lord. He may have a bit different doctrine than me, but I believe he's a brother in the Lord who loves the Lord Jesus Christ. He uses that word Yeshua, and you guys know I don't use the word Yeshua or whatever they use. I'm sticking with words in the King James Bible, but I don't think if Anthony uses the wrong word, that's an issue of like eternal hell. I just think he's using the wrong word, but he can use whatever word. I mean, that's between him and God. I won't use it, but hey, I believe he follows the Bible the way that he believes he should follow the Bible. And I don't think he should be in prison. They've postponed Anthony's trial 7 times. The last time they postponed it, It's now over a year out. He won't even go to trial for another year. I'm going to start advocating for Anthony. We're going to start taking his phone calls. We've already built a web page. If you want to see videos with Anthony to get to know him, I suggest you write him a letter. They got him kept in a Hawaii federal prison. Now, a lot of these people, once they start talking to me or my wife, the government finds a way to block us. Not only that, but we know how deceitful the government is. They write letters to the prisoner to make me look bad. You know, they tell lies about me, so the prisoner starts to distrust me. As an example, when the FBI wanted to cause problems within the Black Panthers, they would find out the hierarchy of the Black Panthers, and they would send an anonymous letter to the treasurer of the Black Panther that the leader of the Black Panthers is sleeping with his wife. Even if it was true or not, it didn't matter. The FBI just wanted to cause problems. And so I believe the FBI sends letters to these prisoners saying things about me that ain't true. And then they don't let the prisoner talk to me, so the prisoner starts to think that I'm doing things that I ain't doing, or I'm saying things that I shouldn't be saying. And I can't have a rapport with the prisoners because they block me and they limit my communications. What they intended for evil, God will use for good. Anthony is being held in a Hawaii federal prison, and I pray that you reach out to him. Ed and Elaine Brown, they're both strong Christian people. I pray that you write them a letter, let them know that you have not forgotten about them and that you care about them. We've got a website about them and Jason Gerhard and Daniel Riley. Jason Gerhard is a man of integrity. I do communicate with him from time to time, and all of my communications and all of my feedback with Ed and Elaine and Jason Gerhard is all three of them are strong people of high moral character. They don't compromise their values, and they've paid a dear price for it. And as Americans, we've let them sit there and rot in prison, and we just don't care. We believe that if they're in prison, they must have done something wrong. There must be something that we don't know. They wouldn't have been sent to prison if they're good people. Do you know that when they sentenced Jason, they gave him a chance to speak? And if I recall, I'm going to paraphrase his speech. He said, well, Judge, I would like to say something to this courtroom. I would like to apologize to all of the victims of my crime. There was a long, pregnant pause. Jason looked around the courtroom. Excuse me, Judge. There is no victim to my crime. Only a fool would send me to prison. Jason got a 20-year prison sentence. Jason got more time in prison than Roy Oliver, who shot Jordan Edwards in the head. Killed him. Do you know that in Balch Springs, Texas, the same city as Roy Oliver, that same police force, that's only 5 miles from my house, maybe 10 miles, they put Graham Dyer in the back of a police car. You can go look this up on YouTube. Look up Graham, G-R-A-H-A-M, Graham Dyer, tased to death in the testicles. They had this young teenage boy. They had him in handcuffs behind the back. They had him in the squad car in the back seat. There wasn't any reason to beat on him anymore. There's no reason. He's handcuffed in the back seat of the squad car, and yet a police officer decides that he's going to whoop out his taser, and he's going to hold his taser to the testicles of Graham Dyer until he dies. And Graham Dyer is screaming bloody murder. He's screaming and banging his head, yelling him to stop. It took Graham Dyer's parents years to get that videotape, and even when they got it, they blocked out the sound. They didn't want the parents hearing the screams. So all you see is Graham Dyer writhing in pain as this devil cop is holding that taser to the balls until he dies. And did that cop ever get held accountable? Did he ever get sent to jail? Nope. Nope. We're not going to send that guy to jail. It's beyond the statute of limitations. Daniel Riley is an accomplished modern Renaissance man. Not only is he a painter, he's a constitutionalist. He's a historian. Daniel Riley is the kind of friend you would want to have. And Daniel Riley knew what was happening with Ed and Elaine Brown, and Daniel Riley decided to go help him. He decided to follow his conscience and be a man of honor, and he went to help Ed and Elaine Brown. Daniel Riley got 30 years in prison. Never hurt anybody. One of the best painters I've ever seen in my life. You should check out the paintings. We've got them uploaded to his website. 30 years in prison? Eddie Ray Kane. Eddie Ray Kane was giving seminars about tax information. It's called the Tax Honesty Movement. Eddie Ray Kane got 20 years in prison. He hasn't hurt anybody. They extradited him from Panama. I think it's a non-extradition country. But hey, if you're speaking out against the IRS, we're going to extradite you, boy. And they brought him back to America. Now he's in prison. He's got health issues. I'm concerned they're going to try to kill him. He's been in prison since 2006. That would be about 13 years. He's got a beautiful, wonderful wife that loves him. Never hurt anybody. His crime is he was having seminars teaching people how to do taxes and tax information. And how the people used it was up to them. He got messed up with Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes even went a little bit to prison. But hey, Eddie Ray Kane is not famous like Wesley Snipes. So Eddie Ray Kane's got to do 20 years. Wesley Snipes, he'll get out after a year or two. Congressman Steve Stockman. Congressman Steve Stockman had a bumper sticker that said, if babies had guns, they would not be aborted. Congressman Steve Stockman wanted Lois Lerner to be arrested for targeting Tea Party conservatives using her position as the IRS. I was one of those people that was targeted. When Lois Lerner was in power, my wife and I got a bill for $25,000 because we were raising a stink about Obama's birth certificate. We beat that. That's all glory to God. Because we didn't owe the money. Congressman Steve Stockman wanted Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, and Barack Obama to lose their jobs and to be convicted for their crimes. Congressman Steve Stockman was our kind of guy. And just like they set up that Indian dude who was making all those movies, what's his name? Anyway, I can't think of his name. He's an Indian dude. He made a bunch of famous movies about liberty and stuff. You guys will know who I'm talking about. They got him on misusing campaign donations. Congressman Steve Stockman lived in a tract home, a neighborhood like everybody else. He didn't have a big fancy home. He didn't drive a big fancy car. But some people gave him some money to run for Congress. And the FBI went and intimidated the donors, and now they're saying that he misused the money when he did not. Congressman Steve Stockman got sentenced to 10 years in prison. They wanted to put him in prison a lot longer. He could die in prison if we don't raise our voices. He's also got a wonderful wife that advocates for him. His website is called defendapatriot.com. Todd Engel. Todd Engel is guilty of supporting the Bundys. Todd Engel is guilty of having a good conscience. Todd Engel is guilty of having morals and good ethics. Todd Engel will not get out of prison until 2028. He got 14 years. What'd Todd Engel do? Can somebody tell me what he did? Did he shoot Jordan Edwards in the head? Oh, no, that's not him. No. That was Roy Oliver. Roy Oliver and Todd Engel's got about the same sentence. One guy is a cop who shot a black dude in the head, and Todd Engels went and supported the Bundys. Lonnie and Karen Vernon. I haven't talked to Lonnie in a long time. I don't know if they're not letting my letters get through or what. Karen recently blocked me, and I don't know why. I'm concerned. Before, when Karen blocked me, a guard told Karen that I was saying things that I wasn't saying. And so I'm concerned that Karen, you can understand why Karen don't trust anybody. If your life had been infected with the parasite named Bill Fulton, and if your life had been infected with the parasite named Gerald J.R. Olson, and they were paid FBI informants that came into your home and acted like they were your friends, maybe for the rest of your life, you would be a little bit distrustful of everybody that said they were your friend. Maybe you would. Maybe that's why Karen recently blocked me. I don't know. But I've tried to be very sensitive with Karen, so I don't send her a lot of stuff that might be controversial, but she blocked me anyway, so I don't know what's going on. I'm concerned some of the guards have been lying to her about me. Lonnie, I would like to talk to, I would like to communicate with, but I don't know if they're blocking my letters or what. I believe they're trying to kill Lonnie. He's got some severe health problems. And Lonnie is a good guy. And there's going to come a time when justice will happen in a divine way. And Gerald J.R. Olson and Bill Fulton and Lonnie and Karen will be weighed in the balance by the true God of the universe. And I believe Lonnie and Karen are covered in the blood. And all of these lying, evil, wicked deeds done by Bill Fulton and Gerald J.R. Olson, and all of their provocations, and all of their death threats, and all of their lies and deceptions and destroying evidence, all that's going to come to light. It's already come to light for those of us who care enough to dig in and read this stuff. But for those of us who don't care, and you just think the justice system is doing what it needs to do, it's coming. We serve a God of justice. And that God that's written about in the Old Testament, that God, the only God, the one true God, I am that I am. Let me tell you something. If God says that most people won't make it into heaven and that the path to destruction is large, that's what he means. He says what he means and he means what he says. Yori Von Kaul and Scott Fall are both innocent men in prison. There's a movie called Death and Taxes, the story of Gordon Kaul. If you want the link, you let me know. I did not put the video on YouTube. I've been accused of putting the video on YouTube, but I did not do it. Somebody else did it. I don't know who they are. Go look at their YouTube name. It's Marty Schoen. I don't even know who the guy is. But I suggest you go watch the movie before they take it down. Because once they take it down, you got to pay like $30. I want people to be educated about Yori Von Kaul and Scott Fall and Gordon Kaul. I want them to be educated about that. I know for a fact they're blocking my letters to Mike Parsons. I know for a fact they're not letting my letters get through. Mike Parsons called me this morning and we talked about things. I was going down the road and I didn't get a chance to relay all the information that I wanted to. I wasn't in front of my computer, but they are doing everything they can to silence Mike Parsons. I believe they're going to try to kill him. And he's very similar in many ways to Jeffrey Winehouse. He was exposing corruption. He ran for public office. Look at these people and see how they were running for public office. Mike Parsons, Jeffrey Winehouse, Schaefer Cox. Pat Parsons is in prison. I'm concerned about her. She was entrapped by the FBI. Did I mention that the FBI are children of the devil? Did I mention that the CIA is like they're the ugly duckling of Satan's team? The CIA justifies all the wickedness that they do in the name of patriotism. If it's good for the United States, then it don't matter how unbiblical it is. It don't matter how evil it may appear on its face. If it's in the interest of national security, the CIA is going to do it. You can bet your bottom dollar. I don't care if that's torture. I don't care if that's hiring prostitutes for informants. I don't care if that's political assassinations. I don't care if that's bribery. I don't care if that's acquiring a 9-year-old Bangkok prostitute for a high-level terror informant. I don't care if that's outright murder. All they got to claim is it's in the best interest of national security. So we got to do it. Free Laser. He's been in prison 36 years. He's been in prison just a few months longer than Yuri Von Kaul in Scott Fall. Free Laser shot a sodomite who was coming at him with a meat cleaver, who broke the door down to his own house. The NRA and the gun owners of America should pick up the case of Free Laser, and he should be a poster boy for self-defense. But nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to help Free Laser. For people that know what's going on, we care about Free Laser. We know that he's innocent. We know that he had to kill the guy because he was coming at him with a meat cleaver. The guy was going to kill him. Gary Michael Northington. There's nothing new under the sun. Gary Michael Northington, just like in the book and the documentary, The Franklin Cover-Up, Gary Michael Northington was invited to some of these child auctions where they were auctioning off children for sex slaves. They were having mock satanic rituals where they would act like they're killing people, and it was all done under the name of satanic worship. And he wrote a book about it called The Satanic Deception. He was exposing this sort of behavior, and they set him up on conspiracy to murder charge. How long is Gary Michael Northington serving? Because he did not hurt anybody. It's a conspiracy charge. And when they charge you with conspiracy, it means you didn't really do anything. They're just going to tell everybody that's what you were planning to do. So, how long is Gary Michael Northington going to serve in prison for conspiracy? Life. L-I-F-E. Life. Did Gary Michael Northington taser Graham Dyer while he was handcuffed in the back of a squad car in the balls until he died? Because that would deserve life. Murdering a young teenage boy with a taser in the testicles until he died? That would deserve life. Surely, don't call me Shirley, surely Gary Northington must have done something like that to get life in prison. No. There's no victim in the case of Gary Michael Northington, who served his country honorably in the U.S. Air Force. Roy Oliver with the police department is spending 15 years for shooting a young black teenager in the head and killing him, murdering him. He's serving 15 years. Gary Michael Northington, life. Did you hear what I said? That means he was put in prison in 1987. That's 32 years ago, folks. You're going to wake up day after day after day after day. The guards are going to mistreat you. You're going to get in fights. You're surrounded by debauchery all the time. All of your family and all of your friends have abandoned you. Philip Zodhiates, what's his crime? He got 3 years in prison. He drove a lady to the airport. There was no travel restrictions on the lady. She didn't have a no travel restriction on her. He drove a lady to the airport. The lady happened to be an ex-lesbian who was the natural birth mother of a daughter who was trying to get the daughter away from an abusive lesbian. And because the courts are so pro-lesbian, they said, you can't drive this converted Christian lesbian to the airport. If you drive that lady to the airport, we're going to put you in jail for 3 years. And that's what they did to Philip Zodhiates. Richard Taus, we're communicating with him. He served honorably in the Vietnam War. And when I say that he's a war hero, that's not just my opinion. He has medals to prove that he was a part of the Tet Offensive. He was a Chinook helicopter pilot. He served honorably in the FBI for 11 years. He saw the drug running of the CIA. Do you have any family members that have been touched by drugs? Because I have 2 brothers whose lives have been ruined by drugs, and I blame the CIA. They ran drugs into America under the CIA supervision, and millions of people's lives were affected, including my family. And Richard Taus wanted to bring this issue before Congress so it would stop. He also had information about illegal relationships, unethical relationships between the FBI and the mafia. And he also knew that the FBI was assassinating whistleblowers. If you want to know a really good FBI whistleblower, go look up the name Dr. Frederick Whitehurst and how he was reporting that FBI crime labs are not unbiased, that FBI crime labs are purposely skewing the results in order to get a conviction. I can't make this stuff up, man. Richard Taus had information that would have affected a presidential election. They set him up with evidence to make him look like he's a heinous criminal. His charges are heinous, and practically all of his friends have abandoned him. But we will not abandon him. We believe that he's innocent. And until it's proven otherwise, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I pray you write a letter to Richard Taus and let him know that you care about him. And let him know that we have not abandoned this war hero who served his country honorably. Jacob Scott Goodwin and Daniel Borden. Both of those are young men who were trying to do the right thing and stand up for their heritage at Charlottesville. And there's a young black man named DeAndre Harris. And whatever you think about the rebel flag, I don't think the rebel flag is racist. But if you do, that's your business. I don't bother me, you know. Daniel Borden and Jacob Scott Goodwin were involved in a scuffle with DeAndre Harris. DeAndre Harris took a mag flashlight and whacked Harold Cruz upside the head. And it put a huge bump on his head, and they say he's never been the same since. He's lost his ability to reason, his faculties that he once had. And do you know what the left uses to justify the fact that DeAndre Harris, a young black man, do you know what they say justifies the fact that DeAndre Harris took a mag flashlight and whacked Harold Cruz upside the head? They say, oh, he was just upset about that flag. So you're telling me that a reasonable excuse for whacking an elderly man upside the head with a violent force that it affects his faculties for the rest of his life is you don't like the flag that he was carrying? Is that what you're telling me? And so when DeAndre Harris had done this on camera, oh, by the way, not only was it recorded on camera, but DeAndre Harris was acquitted of all the charges. DeAndre Harris puts out a little GoFundMe page and says, please help me, I was beat up by some bad racists. DeAndre Harris gets $166,000. He gets in a scuffle with Daniel Borden and Jacob Scott Goodwin, who had seen what had happened. And he gets in a scuffle. Now, DeAndre Harris, it's a street fight. DeAndre Harris was on the ground. There was a scuffle, but there was no permanent damage done to DeAndre. Was DeAndre permanently damaged? No. Was DeAndre shot in the head or tasered in the balls until he died? No. What do you think the penalty should be for Daniel Borden and Jacob Scott Goodwin, who were reacting to the fact that DeAndre had just violently attacked Harold Cruz? What do you think the punishment should be? Well, what really happened is DeAndre Harris gets $166,000 from all over the country, and NPR, National Public Radio, paints Jacob Scott Goodwin and Daniel Borden as white supremacist devils. Jacob Scott Goodwin gets 8 years in prison, had never been in trouble with the law before. Daniel Borden gets several years himself. I think he got 3 or 4 years. They've never been in trouble with the law. Both Daniel and Jacob's fathers served our country in the military honorably. You say, well, you don't like that rebel flag. You don't like the fact that Jacob Scott Goodwin is not ashamed that he was born white. You want Jacob Scott Goodwin and Daniel Borden to be ashamed that they were born with white skin. You want them to be ashamed of their white heritage. And because they're not ashamed of it, you think it's okay that Daniel Borden and Jacob Scott Goodwin get sent to prison for 11 years, both of them 8 and 3. And you think it's okay that DeAndre Harris viciously attacks Harold Cruz with a mag flashlight and he gets $166,000. That's completely okay with you. That's not justice. And when you think that that is justice, the pendulum swings. You know what I mean? And just like I would stand up for anybody of any ethnicity or religious belief, I'm standing up for Jacob Scott Goodwin and Daniel Borden. We praise God that Bryce Matthew Quellar is free. And if you have not seen his videos, go to his webpage on Year of Jubilee. Jubilee is spelled with 1 E. If you can't remember yearofjubilee.com for some reason, everybody always wants to put 2 E's. The King James Bible has 1 E. Go to IHateTheFBI.com. Everybody seems to remember that pretty good. The next prisoner I want to talk about is Chris Moltz, MOLTZ.com. Go to chrismoltz.com. This man was 20 years old. He had a conversation about a crime. There was a group of young men who wanted to do a robbery. Chris Moltz informed them that this guy's house, I believe he's got some drugs. They went and robbed this guy's house. Chris Moltz did not go with them. He did not tell them to rob the house. He did not instruct them to rob the house. All he said is, I believe he's got some drugs over there. So they went to go rob the house. Chris Moltz didn't go. He wasn't a part of it. During the course of the robbery, they murdered a guy. That's a horrible thing. Chris Moltz is serving, now get this next phrase that I'm going to use, I want it to sink into your head. I don't think it's sinking into your head. I don't think you get it. Chris Moltz is serving, you ready? Life without parole. Life! Life without parole. He's been in prison 21 years. He's 41 years now, 41 years old, and he's going to die in prison. What did he do to die in prison? He told some boys that a house has some drugs in it, and they went and robbed it. He didn't tell him to go rob it. He didn't tell him to kill anybody. And you're thinking, I know what you're thinking, there must be some more to this story. There must be more to the story. Rudy's not giving me the whole story. When these boys get up on the stand, because they're going to say anything they can to get out of a long prison sentence, they start saying things. They say Chris Moltz, he drew a map of the house. Where's the map? I don't know where the map is, but he drew a map. There's no map. Where is the map? They said a bunch of things on the witness stand in order to get lenient sentences. They made Chris out to be a Charles Manson godfather. Chris Moltz, at 20 years old, is directing the actions of this group of boys. He's telling them, you go rob the house, you murder these people, and I'm going to give you a map. Where's the map? He's 20 years old. He's not a godfather. He's not a Charles Manson. There's no evidence of that except for the testimony of the boys who were trying to get lenient sentences. And you're going to tell me that it's justice that Chris Moltz has to spend 21 years in prison, and look, he's only 41. He's going to look for the rest of his life with no hope of ever getting out? That ain't right. It ain't right. If you think it's right, there's something wrong with you. All right, I'm going to go to a list of other prisoners, and we're going to work through that. It takes a long time. Why does it take a long time? Why have I been speaking over an hour? Because we got a lot of dang prisoners, you know. Do you know that last year my wife and I counted it up, and we communicated with over 70 prisoners. I know they're not all innocent. I'm not saying they're all innocent. But do you know that even the guilty ones that the Lord says, don't abandon your brothers and sisters in prison? You know, the parable of the Good Samaritan. Did he ask what the Samaritan's theological belief system is? No, you just help somebody because they need help. When you see somebody stuck on the side of the road, or you see somebody stuck in a burning car, or when the fireman comes to put out the fire in your house, does he say, are you a Christian? Are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? Do you believe in once saved, always saved? Because I ain't saving anybody who don't believe that. The Bible says, remember your brothers in bonds. It don't say to give them a theological test. Okay, Michael Griffin, he was arrested on March the 9th of 1994. I've never communicated with Michael. I've sent him letters, but he's never replied to me, but I'm going to tell you a story. Marilyn Manson wrote a song. It was one of his very first songs, if not his first song. Marilyn Manson wrote a song called Get Your Gun, G-U-N-N. And Michael Griffin, back in 1994, walks up to an abortion doctor. And he just takes a shotgun and shoots him, just kills him on the spot. And Michael Griffin gets life in prison. And, of course, if you look at this thing from a biblical perspective, he just killed a murderer who was going to murder a whole lot more people. Now, what I was told by someone who spent time with Michael Griffin is that on his 21st year, so you figure 1994, he's been in prison nearly 25 years now. When he was in prison 21 years, a lady shows up at his parole hearing. And she says, and she happened to be 21 years old, and it's his 21st parole hearing. And she said, my mother was going to get an abortion the day that Michael Griffin killed the abortion doctor, David Gunn. And had he not killed him, my mother would have aborted me and I would not be here today. Now wrap your mind around that story. Now, I don't know that Michael Griffin will ever get out unless God works a miracle, but do you think Michael Griffin is worth a letter of encouragement? Do you have time to put a little encouraging scripture on a postcard for Michael Griffin, who spent 25 years in prison and will die in prison. I don't even see what he did as being murder. I think you could make a self-defense argument for what he did, if not, maybe not self-defense, but defense of others, defense of other lives. You wrap your mind around that situation. Dennis Morgan Hicks is on Alabama death row. They will electrocute Dennis Morgan Hicks. They say that he murdered, heinously murdered, in a grisly murder, Joshua Duncan. From my understanding of the story, they have no evidence against him whatsoever, except the testimony of a 3-year-old toddler who wasn't even in the same city as the murder occurring. This toddler said Uncle Dennis got in a fight with Joshua Duncan. And because he said that, the prosecution, who uses jailhouse informants to put people on death row, they jump to the conclusion and they advance their own careers by getting a conviction on Dennis Morgan Hicks. I believe Dennis Morgan Hicks is innocent, and I believe he's a brother in the Lord. I pray that you write Dennis Hicks a letter and let him know that you care about him. The next man, Patrick Hoffman. He's been in prison since 1986. That's over 32 years. At 2:30 in the morning, 2 police officers decide they are going to go on the property. 2:30 in the morning. They're going to go on the property of Elmer McGinnis, who's Patrick Hoffman's father, and also Patrick Hoffman. And they're going to arrest Elmer McGinnis. There was a shootout that ensued, and a man by the name of Lou Millard is killed. Now, the way that Patrick tells the story, he believes that he was shot by his fellow officer because it was 2:30 in the morning and nobody could see properly. And they didn't have any business going out there at 2:30 in the morning anyway. And Patrick says that they went out there being disobedient to their supervisor's orders. And there's a lot of other things that Patrick says about cover-ups, because it was a native Indian tribal land, and there's cover-ups about people wanting to make deals with the federal government to get additional money, and there was incentives for foul play. And so the way Patrick tells the story is that there's a man, the other officer named John Dick is the one who's responsible for the death of Lou Millard. And he says if you had a picture of the bullet, you would easily see that it's not from Patrick Hoffman's gun, which I believe is an Intertech 99. I may be saying the name of the gun wrong, but he says that the bullet only shows to be half as big. The bullet doesn't match the ballistics of the gun that Patrick Hoffman used. And that's the story that Patrick Hoffman tells, and I got no reason to disbelieve him, and I don't think he's telling a lie. He spent 32 years in prison. Now, if you want to listen to the story of Patrick Hoffman, he goes into the excruciating detail of everything that he has to say, and he's been advocating his innocence since the very beginning. And some people will say, well, he rambles on, and he doesn't stay on point, and he talks about a lot of things that he's over 70 years old. He's been in prison for 32 years. His own father died in prison, and your critique of him is you don't like his rambling on? Have you ever spoken to elderly people who are 70 years old? I have an 85-year-old mother. Do you not have a heart to have a little patience and to listen to what he's got to say? And there are some people, and I wasn't going to mention their name. I thought we had had a congenial discussion. I thought that we had had a phone conversation, and I thought we weren't going to say their names anymore. But now they've issued a lawsuit against Patrick Hoffman. It isn't enough that he spent 32 years in prison, that his father died in prison. It isn't enough that We've had multiple people brag about calling the prison and getting Patrick harassed, but now they want to issue a lawsuit to put a gag order on Patrick Hoffman. They want Patrick Hoffman not only to suffer in prison and to die in prison, just like his father, they want him to suffer. They want him to not be able to call me. They want him not to be able to have his voice on the internet. And so they've issued a lawsuit against him. They also, Corey Millard has also claimed she has received death threats. She claims from some of my supporters. I don't think so. And if you want to claim to be the victim of death threats, welcome to the club. If you just make any controversial statement on YouTube, you're going to get death threats. I mean, Aaron and I have a death threat hotline. If you're a sodomite and you want to kill us, press 1. If you're with the Obama organization and you don't like our stance on the birth certificate, press 2. If you're an Orthodox Jew and you don't like what we say about the Talmud, press 3 if you want to kill us, right? There's a lot of people that want to kill us. There's a lot of people that want to see my YouTube channel taken down. There's a lot of people that don't like my ministry. And so we don't call prisons to have 70-year-old men have a gag order and be harassed. I can't believe anybody would brag about doing that. And we got Bill Fulton filling up Corey's head with how violent I am and how violent my supporters are. I don't know that there's anybody that supports me, but let's say there's a few. Are you kidding me? You talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Bill Fulton claiming that I'm violent? You got to be, that's the most ironic thing I've ever heard of in my life. The man who held a knife to Les Zerbe's throat, the man who told Lonnie Vernon, you remember Schaefer Cox, the time I almost killed Les. He's paid by the FBI. He's tried to make a living riding the coattails of Schaefer Cox. I'm going to support Patrick Hoffman. I don't think there's evidence to suggest that he murdered Lou Millard. Matter of fact, when Patrick Hoffman talks about the FBI ballistics being flawed, all you got to do is look up the name Dr. Frederick Whitehurst. It's been a pattern in the FBI during that same time frame. Barbara Holder has a website called barbaraholder.us. They say that she hired somebody to murder her husband. Go read her story and you make a decision for yourself. I have sat face to face with Barbara Holder with a piece of glass between us. And I can tell you that she is a dear, sweet woman who is worthy of your letters, worthy of your time, and worthy of your prayers. And I pray that you write her a letter and tell her you love her. She's going to die in prison if God doesn't work a miracle and she doesn't get a pardon. I don't think she hired anybody to kill her husband. I think she's telling the truth. Go read her story on barbaraholder.us. Daniel Holtzclaw, he's got a website called holtzclawtrial.com. There's a famous Asian lady that advocates for him, and she's very, very popular, Michelle Malkin. So go educate yourself about Daniel Holtzclaw, and you ask yourself if, first of all, the internal affairs of investigator is a dyke. And Daniel Holtzclaw claims to be a Christian. And this lesbian internal affairs investigator had it out for Daniel Holtzclaw. And isn't it amazing that none of these women made claims against Daniel until they were visited? At least that's my understanding. If I'm wrong, you correct me. But how come the people that are supposedly raped and molested by Daniel, a lot of them have been proven to be liars? There's a really, really good news report about Daniel Holtzclaw, and I can't think of the gentleman's name, but I'll try to find it. You know what? I might put it under his name. So after I make this video, I'll try to find the news report that was done about Daniel, and I'll try to put the link on his name on list of other prisoners. Kurt F. Johnson, He's Schaefer Cox's friend. We've been banned from communicating with Kurt Johnson. And he's very similar to Anthony Troy Williams. He was exposing banking and mortgage fraud. He's been in prison since 2005, so he's been in prison 14 years. He won't get out until 2028. When people see pictures of Kurt Johnson, he's bald-headed, and he's not bald because he's a skinhead or he shaves his head. He's got a medical condition that causes that. I believe that Kurt Johnson is innocent, and I believe that he's a good friend of Schaefer Cox, and he's a strong Christian. There are a couple of veterans on our website named Clint Lawrence and Derek Miller. If you support our veterans and you want to hear some horrific stories about these men who've been sentenced to prison for a very, very long time because they had a desire to serve the military, then you need to educate yourself about Clint Lawrence. His website is Free Clint Lawrence, Lorance. And there's also one named Derek Miller. Robert David Neal was murdered in the CMU. There's no doubt in my mind that the warden was involved in that and knew very well what was going to happen and very well directed it. Very possibly directed the murder of Robert David Neal. Robert David Neal had already been put in a coma previously because of a lawsuit that he had raised against the Bureau of Prisons. Charles E. Samuels Jr. Look up solitary cell Charles E. Samuels Jr. and Roy Oliver. Not Roy Oliver, John Oliver. John Oliver. Keith Orr. Keith Orr is in a Florida prison. He's a black man. And he said he left the cult of black Hebrew Israelites and he just wants to follow the Bible and be a Christian. Black Hebrew Israelites believe people like me with white skin are children of the devil. And people like in the black Hebrew Israelites, they think that God is going to punish white people like me and I'm going to be the slave of black people for 1,000 years. That's what they think. They are the black version of the KKK. They're probably worse than the KKK. I don't even think the KKK thinks black people are going to serve them for 1,000 years under the reign of judgment of God. But the reason I'm mentioning Keith Orr is he is a Christian brother and we should write him a letter. And I'm not claiming that he's innocent. But what I am claiming is that Keith Orr is worthy of your time and your prayers. And Keith Orr has left the cult of black Hebrew Israelites. That letter was so inspiring to me that I wanted to share it with Schaefer Cox. And when I shared that letter with Schaefer Cox, the warden, who's a child of the devil, Warden B. True at Marion Prison, he used that as an excuse that I was passing messages between prisoners, and he blocked me from ever talking to Schaefer Cox again. And that will come up at Judgment Day. That one issue ain't going to slide. He thinks it's going to slide, but the fact that they banned me illegally for sharing the gospel conversion of Keith Orr with Schaefer Cox, that's going to come up at Judgment Day. Omar Quasi, who is a big supporter of the Bundys, didn't even go to trial until 42 months later. I don't know anyone that had to wait 42 months to go to trial, but because Omar Quasi supported the Bundys, he had to wait that long. Darlie Routier, I believe, is innocent. Did you know that on Texas death row, which Darlie Routier is in, they don't even let them have access to a phone? Dennis Morgan Hicks is on Alabama death row, and he calls me. Do you think if you're on death row, you should have access to a phone? I do. They won't let Darlie Routier call anybody. They don't let anybody on Texas death row call anybody. You have to write to them, even their lawyers. They won't even let me put Barbara Holder, who's on Texas life row, not death row, but life. They won't even let me put her on a speakerphone. But I found another way to record her voice without doing that. All right. The last guy is Ross Albright. I think he got like 250 years. I forget how many. He's got a website called freeross.org. His mother advocates for him a great deal. You know, it took me a long time because I have a lot to say. And I may look angry, and you guys probably are turned off, and you hate watching an angry white man speak for an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it turns you off. You guys help me. How can I be in a good mood and talk about a lot of innocent men and women suffering in prison? How can I speak about Pat Parsons, Elaine Brown, and Karen Vernon suffering in prison? Tell me how to be upbeat and joyful as I talk about all this pain and suffering. I think it would look a little goofy, right, if I was smiling all the time and talking about all these innocent people in prison. It just looks. How can you not be a little angry? How can you not be a little upset? There comes a time, as conflict escalates, that I would refer you to what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said. He said if we had resisted more as a people when they came and rounded up all the dissidents and made the people think twice whether they were going home that night, maybe they wouldn't have put so many people in prison. There are things worse than death. There are things worse than death. When we get to heaven and we're fellowshipping with our brothers and sisters and we're glorifying the God Almighty, Jesus Christ, who died for our sins, and somebody comes up to you and they ask you the question, hey, what was it like to live in a society where you had to give up your guns? What was it like to live in a society where you had to be sent to FEMA camps and they put all you guys in prison? Tell me, what was it like? You know what the best answer would be? I don't know. I didn't give up my guns, and I didn't let them send me to a FEMA camp. It never happened. You're going to have to go ask somebody else, because I didn't allow that to happen while I was alive.